guess I'm fairly easily prepared to go forward because...
Could you use your microphone, please?
Sure. Is that better?
It should be. We'll see.
I'm prepared to go forward because preparing my argument was really pretty easy. I have in my hand, Judge, a transcript of your decision the last time we were here, and I have the Randall case. And that's really my argument, Judge. I think in looking at the court's analysis of this back in April of 2024, there's not really anything different here, in my opinion, in terms of how the analysis comes out. And I mentioned the Randall case, obviously, because what is different now, we do have 3 doctors all saying that you should grant conditional release here, but as the court pointed out last time, and as Randall indicates, the court is not bound by the conclusion that the experts have reached, even if those opinions are uncontroverted. So certainly the court has to make up its own mind as to whether or not the evidence at this point indicates a substantial risk of bodily harm to herself or to others. And last time, Judge, you started your analysis looking at the factors as they're set out in 971.17 sub 4 sub D. And after it indicates the court shall grant the petition unless it finds by clear and convincing evidence the person would pose a significant risk of bodily harm to himself or herself, the statute indicates the court may consider without limitation because of enumeration, number 1, the nature and circumstances of the crime. That's where you started your analysis last time, Judge, and it's the state's position that this offense alone is enough to demonstrate by clear and convincing evidence that there's a substantial risk here to others and to herself. The court pointed out that this was a brutal attempted murder. The effort to stab somebody 19 times. But then she's not dead, but then they leave. Of course, with the idea or thinking that she'll bleed to death. You know, when I think about this, Judge, I can't help but thinking most people in society are not capable of committing the offense that Morgan Geyser committed. Most people are not capable of taking a knife and plunging it into someone else. One time, Morgan, as we know, did it 19 times and then left this victim to bleed to death and walked away. So, again, the state's position is the offense alone is enough, Judge, to find that there is a significant risk. I know Dr. Collins indicated that certainly the underlying offense is a factor. I think it has to be a huge factor when you're tasked to consider whether or not she represents a risk of substantial bodily injury. The court then went on to analyze the situation by looking at her mental history and present mental condition. And I think that also is still, Judge, very much up in the air. And I'm not saying it's necessarily up in the air because she's experiencing psychotic symptoms or she's delusional. Those things aren't present. But as the court indicated last time in your decision, Judge, we still don't really know why Morgan Geyser committed this offense. And we've had different reasons provided over the years. The court pointed out the diagnosis initially was, or the rationale was Slender Man. And the diagnosis was schizophrenia. Then we have Morgan indicating at some point that, I believe it was shortly before our last hearing in April of 24, sometime in 2023, that she faked all of these hallucinations. Really, as you indicated, really the groundwork for the schizophrenia diagnosis, and she made it up. Then the explanation, I guess, shifts from Slender Man to trauma related from sexual abuse by her father. And the sexual abuse is used, I guess, to go two different routes. One, the trauma from that was such that she lived in this fantasy world, or the trauma was such that she felt her only way out was to commit an offense as horrendous as this and be removed from the situation. We're not really sure which of those two reasons is at play here, but that was the explanation offered. And now, apparently she's backed off the claim that she made this all up. And now, again, I think we're in a position where we really don't understand it. In looking at the doctor's reports regarding this, I guess I would first go to page 4 of Dr. Robbins' report, where he tries to address this and indicates in the middle of the first paragraph on that page, I believe the only reasonable explanation is that either, he uses the word either, so the only reasonable explanation is one of two. He offers two. Again, we don't know which it is, but he offers two, indicating that she did experience psychotic symptoms, or much more likely, her fantasy was so powerful, she came to believe it was real. And for multiple reasons, I assume he's talking about afterwards, particularly not wanting to see herself as evil following the events. She had a hard time letting go of it. But it really doesn't offer an explanation about her fantasy being so powerful she came to believe it. I guess that's saying that she really felt that Slender Man was going to get her or her family, and she had to offer up this sacrifice to him. But he also said at the same time it could be that she was experiencing psychotic symptoms.
Now, what page of Dr. Robbins' report are you on?
That is page 4 of Dr. Robbins'
All right.
report, the middle of the paragraph on top.
I see it. Very
Not clear or
good.
sure which one of those it is. I'm sorry?
Yeah, I see it. I see where you're reading from.
Okay. In looking at page 7 of Dr. Lundbaum's report, and this is the last paragraph at the bottom of page 7, in contrast to her previous self-report, Ms. Geyser denied she ever feigned symptoms of psychosis. So now she's saying she didn't make up these symptoms. But Ms. Geyser says, rather, until my late teens, I thought I could make imaginary friends real. They existed in my mind, but they weren't in front of me. When clarifying her previous statement that she feigned psychiatric illness, she acknowledged that it has been difficult to understand her illness and circumstances due to her age when the index offense occurred, and significant changes in her symptoms/experiences over time. That still doesn't give us any explanation, and it goes on to say, while denying that she intentionally fabricated mental health impairments, again, in contrast to what she was saying in 2023, Morgan said, it was easier to say I was pretending. Part of the problem is how young I was. I didn't really understand the severity of what happened until I was about 14. She made further comments suggesting her difficulty discerning fantasy from reality during her adolescence. In combination with periods of dissociation, She acknowledged breaks in her reality attachment. Again, that doesn't offer, and I haven't really seen anything in the doctor's reports that offer an explanation of what she understands now is the reason for her being involved in this offense. In Dr. Collins's report, I guess, on page 31, in the 6th paragraph that begins, in a meeting with social services staff on July 22nd, 2024, in that paragraph, it's stated, he, now referring to Morgan, given the gender situation, he can recall the fantasy life he used, both prior to and since hospitalization, as a way to cope and manage with reality, but has since come to believe that this was not schizophrenia, but rather a coping strategy used to keep him safe from the external threats in the environment. Ms. Geyser acknowledged the use of the fantasy world to conceptualize his experiences following his psychiatric hospitalization. The social worker wrote, he consistently has been using the therapy time appropriately to process and cope with the stressors and questions and pain and grief. He is doing a great job. But again, there's no explanation offered or no understanding or indication that Morgan understands why this offense happened. On page 37 of Dr. Collins's report, in the 2nd paragraph on that page, Dr. Collins indicates, while it is this examiner's opinion to a reasonable degree of professional certainty that facts weigh in favor of Ms. Geyser's petition and placement on conditional release at this juncture, I also recognize considerations which may give pause. The issue of Ms. Geyser's diagnostic enigma is one such consideration. Ms. Geyser now reports that she has never experienced auditory hallucinations or psychotic symptoms otherwise. It certainly seems, Judge, that prior to our hearing in April of 2024, that perhaps Ms. Geyser felt this court may be more inclined to release her if she claimed she had never had these psychotic symptoms, if she indicated she made them all up in an attempt to convince the court that she was never schizophrenic and therefore she's no longer dangerous. Now, this time, and she admitted that she went through with the hearing last time, even though 2 doctors said no, she went through with the hearing because she wanted to know what the court's position was and why the court might think conditional release was not appropriate. And after getting your decision in April of 2024, we now kind of have her going back somewhat and saying, well, yeah, maybe I did have imaginary friends, and I don't see that she ever comes back and says, I lied about making it all up. But she seems to no longer say that she made it all up. She's acknowledging it somewhat. But again, we don't have any clear answers whatsoever, Judge, as to what went on, why she committed this offense. We have, I believe it was Dr. Lundbaum who testified, and maybe it's in all 3 doctors seem to indicate that these doctors all believe that the schizophrenic diagnosis was correct, but it certainly is unusual that someone who is schizophrenic is taken off of antipsychotic medication and any such psychotic symptoms disappear and have not come back. So we really don't have explanations for any of that. It's all still up in the air. And in my opinion, is additional evidence that she represents a danger to herself and others. And I know that was a large part of the court's concern back in April of 2024. The court at various points touched on her credibility, and at page 125 of the transcript, Judge, you indicated the credibility of the reporter is critical to what assessments are made, how people, how professionals, how mental health professionals make decisions. They're critical to how legal people make decisions. The credibility of the reporter is paramount. And I still think there are large questions of credibility here.